Hello, my name is Dan Melzer. I'm the Director of First Year Composition for the University Writing Program at the University of California, Davis. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how to make an effective humanities research poster. First, I'm going to give you an overview of the video. I'll start by talking a little bit about the role of research posters in the humanities. Then I'll discuss some features of effective humanities research posters. We'll look at 3 example posters, and I'll talk about preparing and recording your talk. So first, let me just say a few words about the role of research posters in the humanities. You might associate research posters with STEM fields. Oftentimes in STEM fields, folks are reporting about the results of a laboratory study or Hello, my name is Dan Melzer. I'm the Director of First Year Composition in the University Writing Program at the University of California, Davis. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to make an effective humanities research poster. Let me give you an overview of the video. First, I'll talk about the role of research posters in the humanities. Then we'll look at some features of effective humanities research posters. I have some example posters that I want us to look at, and then I'll talk about preparing and recording your talk. So I'll begin by talking a little bit about the role of research posters in the humanities. Some folks think that only STEM fields do research posters, but actually presenting your research in the form of a poster is very common in the humanities. At humanities conferences, in every humanities field, it's very common for there to be a poster gallery session where researchers share the results of their research in posters, and other scholars walk through the gallery and talk with the authors of the posters about their research. So it's very common actually to do research posters in the humanities. Sometimes research posters in the humanities might look a little different than research posters in STEM fields, and we'll talk about that when we look at the features of research posters in the humanities. And when I think about the effective features of a research poster in the humanities, there's 2 areas that I would divide it up. One important consideration is organization, and another important consideration is format. So in terms of organization, the basic organization of a humanities research poster might look fairly similar to the kind of research poster you'd see in a STEM field, where you have some kind of introduction or overview, you'd have a discussion of the research methods, the discussion of the results, and then a works cited or a references page if you're using APA style. The way the humanities posters might be slightly different is especially in terms of our research methods. It's true that in some humanities classes, in some humanities fields, you'll be doing empirical research methods that might result in quantitative data that you'll report. But usually in the humanities, we're not doing experiments. We don't always have quantitative data. Oftentimes, we're looking at secondary sources and making arguments. Or if we are doing qualitative research, we're doing textual analysis, or we're interviewing our participants. So sometimes, or quite often in humanities research, we're not necessarily reporting quantitative data or the results of experiments. So our research methods section might be a little different, but we are still engaged in research methods. When we're doing textual analysis, when we're doing interviews, we're still doing a certain type of research methodology. The discussion of our results can sometimes be a little different in the humanities than in STEM as well. We might not always be reporting our results in graphs or tables with quantitative data. Oftentimes our results have more to do with the arguments that we're making or the synthesis of the research that we're doing. So that's something to think about as well. When you're organizing your research poster, it's very important to focus on just the key ideas and arguments, the key findings, and not try to cover everything. In a 20 or 25 research paper, you can cover a lot of ground. In a poster, you don't have as much room. So you really have to decide, what are my key ideas and key arguments? Along those same lines, you want to be concise with text. In the STEM fields, it's very common for authors to try to be as concise as they can. But oftentimes in humanities writing, we value longer sentences with colons and semicolons and a lot of commas, or very descriptive language, or long paragraphs. And that's the conventions of humanities writing, but you have to adjust those conventions when you're doing a poster. You don't really want a poster with a lot of semicolons and long sentences or big paragraphs. You want to use very concise language. So try to be a lot more concise in your poster than you would necessarily be, for example, in a research paper in the humanities. It's also good to include some relevant or eye-catching visuals. Sometimes in humanities research projects, research papers, we do include visuals, but sometimes we don't. And when you're writing a poster, it's a very visual medium. So you want to include some visuals to catch the reader's attention as they walk through the gallery, to get them interested in your poster. But you want to make sure that these visuals are relevant to your topic. They should help illuminate your topic, help the reader understand your topic more, make a connection to your topic. Sometimes visuals, even in humanities, might be in the form of charts or graphs or tables. So there might be data presented. You might be doing the kind of research project that results in some data that are reported in terms of visuals, like charts and graphs and tables. So that works well for a humanities poster just as it does for a STEM poster. But you might not necessarily have that kind of data, and that's okay. In American academic context, we usually read from left to right and from top to bottom. So when you're organizing your poster, start at the upper left and then go down in columns, moving your way to the right, and end at the bottom right. In international context, in other countries, they might read from right to left, for example. But in this American academic context, you'll go from upper left to bottom right when you're organizing. Formatting issues that are really important to consider. You want to use a sans serif font. Two that I think are really good are Arial and Verdana. It's easier to read a sans serif font in a poster. When you're reading something in print or on a screen, a serif font like Times New Roman is easy to read. But Times New Roman or other serif fonts don't look very good in digital or print posters. So it's easier to read a sans serif font like Arial or Verdana. You don't always use bullets or numbers in research projects in the humanities and research papers. Sometimes you do. But if you didn't in your research paper, in your research project, you'll want to think about using bullets or numbers in your poster, because that's the way to organize text that makes it much easier on the reader to stay organized when they read your poster. You also want to use bold and italics. Well, you don't have to use bold and italics, but you want to consider using those kinds of techniques to highlight text. If you use bold and italics, try to be consistent about it. Use it the same way in every section. So maybe you're using bold for headings or subheadings, or maybe you're using italics to highlight keywords. Do it the same way in every section so you're consistent and you don't surprise the reader or confuse the reader. It's a good idea not to just use grayscale when you're doing a poster, just plain black and white or grays. To catch the reader's attention and to make the poster more engaging and interesting, a little color can help. But you probably want to limit it to 2 or 3 colors. If you start using 5 or 6 or 7 different colors, it can really overwhelm the reader. It's too many colors for your eyes to take in as you're browsing through a poster gallery. Leave adequate white space. You want to make sure that the reader's eye doesn't feel crowded by too much text too close together, or no spacing between bullets or numbers, or text box that don't have spacing within the text box, spacing above and below headings and titles. So we're going to look at some example posters and really pay attention to the use of white space. That's really important in any kind of visual medium. So for academic posters, the use of white space is very important. And for your headings, you want to be descriptive and use large headings. It's okay to have generic headings like introduction, methods, discussion, but it's often good in a poster where people are just kind of browsing through to have a little bit more descriptive headings. That doesn't mean you want to write a 2-sentence subheading, but a little more descriptive than just methods or results can catch the reader's attention and help the reader understand your topic a little better. But however you do the headings, just make sure that they're larger than the other text so they really stand out to the reader. That will really help your reader stay organized. I'm going to show you some additional resources that the Undergraduate Research Conference and the Undergraduate Research Center has prepared for you. I'm going to urc.ucdavis.edu/overview, and you'll see that there's another video, a general video on creating an effective poster. There's a video on how to create video presentations. So for those folks who are participating in the 2020 virtual research conference, you'll be especially interested in that video. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a link for creating effective academic poster resources. And here are even further resources, ideas for what to think about before you even start, how to get started and make an effective poster, and some templates for you to use for your posters. So go to the Undergraduate Research Center website and check out some of those resources. Now I want to look at some example posters and apply what we've been talking about in a concrete way. I found some posters from undergraduates and graduate students across the country, and I grabbed 3 posters that I think will be helpful in talking through some of the ideas that I mentioned in this video. This first poster is from Romance, Language, and Literature department, and a few things about this poster. One thing is it has a very descriptive title, Vices, Scapegoats, and Evil Forces, Magic in the Works of Miguel de Cervantes and some other authors there. So a very eye-catching title. I thought it was very well organized in terms of the text boxes. So it's very easy to see the organizational structure here. And each text box had a very clear heading, background, focus of research, then the 3 different authors that they study, and conclusions and acknowledgments. Some of the problems with this poster, though, some of the things I think that could be revised, a few things. One is, although I thought that the background with the map was very interesting, it made it hard for me as a reader to read the text. So I think having a plain background rather than something that could confuse the reader would be better for this. So I was a little concerned about the background as a reader. The other thing that I think could be improved in this poster is the use of blank space or white space. So even though I like it there, that in each box there's a nice image, there's a bulleted list. The problem is the image and the text and the bullets are very crammed in to the text box. There's not a lot of space between the heading of the text box and the images and the bullets. And this is where the author probably could have had a little less information, been a little more concise, and used more white space. So sometimes you're going to have to sacrifice some information that you wanted to have in your poster in order to make sure that the reader can easily read what you do have. So in a poster, you just have to be really concise. You're not going to be able to put in as many ideas and as many points, as much information as you want to put in, because you have to create some white space for the reader so that they can stay organized. Okay, let's look at the second poster from the Humanities. And this poster is titled, Investigating the Ways the Irish Learn Music. So this was probably from like a musicology class. Some things I like about this poster, I think really good use of images. The images give you a real feel for Ireland, the landscape, and also a feel for the types of instruments that this person studied. I thought this person did a good job of using color for the most part. The title and the subheadings are all in blue, and then the second level subheadings are in red, so it's really easy for a reader to stay organized. A good visual here, this person had some quantitative data that they put in a nice visual. It's right in the middle of the poster, so it's easy to see, and it's nice and big. So these, if you're reporting in charts or tables or graphs, you want to think about making it large enough that the reader can see it. And really clear titles, introduction, procedure and design, conclusions, reflections, data and analysis. These titles could be more descriptive. For example, the title of the data and analysis could describe what the data analysis is about, what the subject is. So they could be a little more descriptive, but I thought they were good. They were very organized. The only thing I wasn't as crazy about with this poster is the yellow color. I felt like it was very bright and it kind of hurt my eyes. So you might choose more of a neutral light background than something super bright like yellow. But overall, I thought this was a good example of a humanities poster. I have one more poster I want to show you. This is a poster from a class focusing on museums, an art class. And this is History a la carte, taking the museum to the people. It's a very clever and descriptive title because it's all about taking a cart with museum pieces around to people. So this was very well organized, I felt, this poster. It has the problem, the cart, testing the cart, conclusions, and then a smaller section on references. So very easy for the reader to stay organized. I like the use of color a lot here with the white background, but then the gray boxes, the black font for the text and the headings, and then some blue font to emphasize the headings. So very nice use of color and really good use of white space. You can see in this one that there's space between headings, there's space under the title. Within each text box, things are spaced within each text box, excuse me. Things are spaced very nicely. So it's very good spacing. The font is a sans serif font. Good use of bullets and bolding. And one thing worth mentioning in this poster is that the reference page is there, but it's very small and only a handful of references. So if you're doing a works cited or a reference on your poster, and you should if you're citing secondary sources, it's okay to have that be a smaller part of your poster. The reference part of the poster doesn't have to be a huge section. And you're not going to necessarily use all the references that you use in your research project. So if your actual paper had 10 or 15 references, your poster will probably only have a handful of references to just focus on some of the main ideas, the main points, the most important references. You probably don't want a poster with 20 different references in it because that will be overwhelming to your audience. So those are some examples of posters. I hope those were helpful. I want to end by giving you some advice about preparing and recording your talk if you're in 2020 and you're doing it virtually. The first thing I want to say is be confident in your research because you worked really hard. I've done a lot of poster sessions as an academic writer and researcher at conferences in my field of writing studies. And I'll admit to you that even when I present a poster as someone who's been doing this for 20 years, I still can get a little nervous. Probably the most nerve-wracking part is you never know what questions you're going to get. And you say to yourself, am I going to be able to answer the questions? But I think the important thing to keep in mind is you have more expertise on your topic than you even realize because you've done a really big research project on it. You've worked really hard, so you'll be able to answer questions, and people are going to be really impressed by the amount of work you've done. If you've been accepted to the undergraduate research conference, that means you've already got some expertise on your topic and have already accomplished a lot. So try to be confident, and I just know that you're going to be able to answer the questions. And if someone asks you a question you can't answer, then it's understandable. You're not going to be able to answer every single question, and you could tell them that you don't have the answer to that question, but it's a good question and it's something to explore. I think it's really important when you're giving a poster presentation to be concise. It's almost like an elevator talk, if you've heard that phrase before, where you're at the top of an elevator and you're trying to explain your research project to someone by the time you get to the bottom of the elevator. It doesn't have to be a 10 or 15-minute talk. It should be brief and just touch on the main points. A little bit of background, the research questions that you had or the topic that you explored, your research methods, your methodology, how you conducted your research, and what your findings are or your final arguments are, and then any reflections you have on the importance of your topic or what you learned. One thing about being concise, though, is you don't want to be so concise that you skim over key concepts or key vocabulary that your readers might not, your audience might not know about. So because you've been doing so much research on your topic and you've become an expert on your topic, I bet there are some concepts or terms that you kind of take for granted now and understand, but that a wider audience might not know about. So if you have any key theories or key vocabulary concepts that you need to explain to your readers, you can briefly explain them in your talk to help readers understand what the key ideas are, if they are terms that an audience might not be familiar with. I think it's really important to practice your talk so you have confidence. Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've given a lot of talks, but I always practice my talks. I'll practice my talks 3 or 4 times and really try to nail it down. And then I'm feeling so much more confident when I actually give my talk. If I've practiced my talks, then I don't start to go off topic or ramble or get confused or have a long pause because I forgot where I'm supposed to be. If I practice, then I feel very confident that I can give a more smooth presentation, and that's very important. You want to dress professionally whenever you're going to an academic conference or giving an academic talk, a professional conference of any kind. You wouldn't dress like you dress when you go to class. You want to dress a little more formally. It doesn't mean that you have to be so formal that you're wearing the fanciest suit. It's not a job interview, but you do want to dress a little more formally than you would if you're in class. If you're doing the 2020 conference and it's a virtual conference, then you can use Zoom or another video presentation platform to record your presentation. And if you remember when I linked on the undergraduate research conference site in the beginning of this presentation, there was a video talking about how to use Zoom, how to use other video platforms to make your presentation. Well, that's the end of my presentation. I wish you good luck, and I hope you enjoy the conference.